The lights flickered erratically in the underground chamber, casting odd shadows across the faces of the assembled researchers. Dr. Elena Voss, her fingers hovering over the neural interface controls, felt the vibrations in the air before the klaxon sounded. Council sanctions confirmed, the synthesized voice announced, its mechanical tone clashing with the urgency of the situation. The Galactic Council had made their move. Elena exchanged a glance with Dmitri, the former astronaut turned lead strategist, whose face reflected a mix of disbelief and defiance. "We've got to ramp up the telepathic network," he said, his voice barely audible over the rising cacophony. The research base, hidden beneath layers of rock and technological camouflage, was humanity's last bastion against alien oversight. Here, they had experimented with the mind's untapped potential, pushing the boundaries of telepathic warfare. The alien coalition believed Earth was defenseless, its technology primitive, easily contained with economic sanctions. They would soon learn how gravely they had underestimated the human spirit. Elena tapped into the neural grid, her consciousness expanding into the sprawling digital landscape. Each synapse was a conduit, each thought a weapon in waiting. She felt the presence of her team, scattered across the globe, linked through the tenuous threads of their shared endeavor. "Ready." Dimitri's voice echoed in her mind, a beacon of calm amidst the storm. "Initiate counter-psi protocols." In an instant, the human network pulsed with the shockwave of a collective willpower, a silent scream that reverberated through the ether and crashed against the mental barriers of the alien overseers. Panic rippled across the galactic grid as the coalition's defenses buckled under the unexpected assault. "We're in," Elena breathed, astonishment mingling with a fierce triumph. But victory came at a cost. The base's power reserves dipped dangerously low, warning lights flashing crimson around them. "We need more time," Elena urged. Dmitri nodded, already flipping switches to reroute auxiliary power. "We can't hold this for long." The Council's retaliation was swift. A psychic backlash surged through the system, threatening to sever their fragile connections. Elena gritted her teeth, the strain palpable as she anchored herself deeper into the network. "Incoming transmission," a voice crackled through the chaos, metallic and urgent. "The Council demands immediate compliance or..." Before the message could conclude, a new presence emerged within the telepathic web. It was vast, alien, and overwhelmingly confident, a mental juggernaut intent on obliterating Earth's defenses. Elena braced herself, feeling the collective shudder of her team. "This is it," Dmitri shouted, as energy levels plummeted. "We either break them now or lose everything." Elena focused, channeling every ounce of human ingenuity and stubborn resilience into a final gambit. The telepathic battlefield crackled with potential, a maelstrom of thought and intent. As the alien mind lunged, she unleashed her own, a hidden arsenal of human thought and spirit, detonating with a brilliance unseen across the galaxy. The chamber shuddered, the very fabric of their hidden sanctuary trembling as the alien presence recoiled, its superiority shattered by the unexpected strength of human defiance. As silence fell, Dimitri's voice cut through the haze, weary yet triumphant. "They're retreating." Elena exhaled, a slow smile spreading across her face. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had turned the tide. The void was alive with screams. They were not simple cries of pain or fear but the wrenching echoes of minds being torn apart, woven into a tapestry of suffering that spanned light years. This was the battlefield, a realm where thoughts could kill, and the only armor was the strength of one's will. Captain Alara Mendez stood at the helm of the Hermes, her mind a fortress amidst the chaos. The ship's neural interface hummed with the pulse of thousands of thoughts, each one a bright star of human resilience against the encroaching darkness. Her crew was scattered across the neural field, maintaining their psychic defenses, their collective consciousness forming a bulwark against the enemy's relentless assault. "Status report," Alara commanded, her voice cutting through the mental cacophony with practiced authority. "Psychic shields holding at 72%, Captain," reported Lieutenant Harris, his brow furrowed in concentration as he maintained the delicate balance of the ship's mental defenses. "But the pressure's increasing. They're adapting faster than anticipated." Alara didn't need to ask who they were. The Althari, a species whose telepathic prowess had made them rulers of half the known galaxy, were a formidable foe. But now, humanity's emergence into the psychic realm had caught their attention, and their response had been swift and brutal. A sudden spike of pain lanced through Alara's mind like a bolt of lightning, a reminder of the enemy's presence. She gritted her teeth, focusing her thoughts into a shield that deflected the mental attack. The Althari were probing, seeking weaknesses, and each strike felt like the touch of death. "Captain," came a voice through the neural link, a whisper amidst the storm. It was Dr. Lena Pritchard, the ship's telepathic specialist. Her mind was a beacon of calm in the tumultuous sea. "I've managed to isolate their frequency. I believe I can disrupt their coordination, but it will require a direct link." Alara hesitated. A direct link meant exposing oneself to the full force of the Althari's psychic might. It was akin to walking into a hurricane with nothing but an umbrella. But it was also their best chance to turn the tide. "Do it," she said finally, her resolve hardening like steel. "But I won't let you do it alone. We'll link together." Across the void of space, the Althari sensed the shift in the energy, their collective awareness honing in on the Hermes with a predatory focus. Their minds were a lattice of shared consciousness, each thought a thread in a web that ensnared the stars themselves. They were aware, now, of the humans' plan. Lena's mind reached out, a slender tendril of thought that brushed against the Althari network. Alara followed, their minds intertwining, a fusion of human will against the alien tide. Instantly, the two women were engulfed in a storm of psychic energy, a maelstrom of alien thoughts battering against their defenses. "Focus," Lena's voice came, a lifeline amidst the swirling chaos. "Remember the training. The mind is a blade, and we must cut through their defenses." Together, they pushed deeper, slicing through the layers of alien consciousness. Each step forward was a battle, the Althari's mental constructs trying to ensnare them, to twist their thoughts into madness. But their resolve was unyielding. As they advanced, the Althari's mental landscape unfolded before them, a labyrinth of strange geometries and impossible architectures, each structure a repository of knowledge and power. It was beautiful and terrible, a testament to the alien minds that had shaped it over millennia. In the core of this labyrinth, they found what they sought, the nexus of the Althari's telepathic network. It pulsed with a dark energy, the heart of their power. Alara and Lena focused their combined will, a spear of intent aimed at the nexus. The Althari sensed the threat, their defenses closing in, but it was too late. With a final push, the humans unleashed their power, shattering the nexus with a mental explosion that rippled through the void. The effect was immediate. The Althari's coordinated assault faltered, their collective consciousness splintering into chaos. It was a momentary respite, but it was all they needed. "Now," Alara shouted through the neural link, her voice ringing with the urgency of the moment. "Engage the warp drive. We need to retreat while we have the chance." The Hermes surged forward, the fabric of space-time bending around it as the warp drive engaged. The Althari's psychic tendrils reached out, desperate to grasp them, but they slipped through the barriers of reality, the stars elongating into lines of light as they vanished into the void. Back in the physical realm, the tension in the bridge eased, the crew relaxing as the immediate threat dissipated. Alara and Lena severed their mental connection, their minds retreating to their own consciousness. "You did it," Alara said, turning to Lena, admiration and relief mingling in her voice. "We did it," Lena corrected, exhaustion etched into her features but her eyes shining with determination. "But this is just the beginning. They'll come back, stronger and more prepared. We need to use this time to find a way to turn the tide for good." Alara nodded, the weight of command settling back onto her shoulders. The Althari were a formidable enemy, but humanity had faced impossible odds before and emerged victorious. They would do so again, or die trying. In the darkness of space, the Althari regrouped, their minds a chorus of anger and surprise. The humans had struck a blow they had not anticipated, shattering the perception of their invulnerability. But now, the Althari knew the humans' potential, and they would adapt. They would evolve. Captain Alara Mendez understood this, understood that the war they fought was one of minds, of willpower and resilience. It was a war that would test the very limits of what it meant to be human. The Hermes sailed through the void, a solitary beacon of defiance against the encroaching darkness. The battle was far from over, but for now, they had bought themselves a precious gift: time. "Captain, incoming transmission," Lieutenant Harris said, breaking the silence. "It's from command." Alara gestured, and the holographic display flickered to life. The image of Admiral Sinclair appeared, his expression grave. "Captain Mendez," he began, his voice carrying the weight of the situation. "We've received reports of Althari incursions across multiple sectors. They're intensifying their efforts. We need every available ship to regroup at the rendezvous point. Prepare for counter-offensive operations." "Understood, Admiral," Alara replied. "We'll be there. We have new data on their network. It could give us an edge." Sinclair's eyes narrowed with interest. "Good work, Captain. This war is far from over, but your actions today have shown that we can fight back. Stay sharp." Sinclair out. The transmission ended, leaving Alara with a renewed sense of purpose. She turned to her crew, the men and women who stood ready to face the unimaginable. "We have our orders," she said, her voice firm and steady. "Prepare for warp. We rejoin the fleet, and we take the fight back to the enemy." As the crew moved with precision, readying the ship for the journey ahead, Alara allowed herself a moment to reflect. The Althari were unlike any enemy humanity had faced before, but in their arrogance, they had underestimated the indomitable spirit of the human race. The control room buzzed with activity, the hum of machinery and the subtle glow of the neural interfaces creating a symphony of technology and thought. Alara closed her eyes, centering herself once more, feeling the familiar presence of her crew, each mind a star in the constellation that was the Hermes. "Jump in 5, announced Lieutenant Harris, his voice a beacon of calm professionalism. Alara opened her eyes, her gaze sweeping over her crew. "Remember, we're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for a future where no mind is enslaved. Let's show them what it means to be human." The Hermes shuddered as the warp drive engaged, propelling them through the fabric of reality. The stars around them twisted and blurred, the ship catapulting through the void with a speed that defied comprehension. In that moment, Alara felt a connection not just to her crew, but to all of humanity. They were a single mind, a single purpose, a single flame burning bright in the darkness. But even as they raced towards the rendezvous point, a shadow loomed on the edge of perception, a sense of something vast and unknowable stirring in the depths of space. The Althari were preparing for their next move, and whatever they had in store would test every limit of human endurance. The stakes were higher than ever, the danger escalating with each passing moment. The war for the mind was upon them, and the outcome was anything but certain. Yet, in the face of such overwhelming odds, there was a certainty that burned bright within Alara's heart. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would fight, and they would endure. And in that quiet moment, as the Hermes sailed through the cosmos, Captain Alara Mendez knew that they were ready for whatever lay ahead. The universe was vast and full of terrors, but it was also full of wonders. And it was time to claim their place among the stars. The Galactic Council's decision resonated across the cosmos like a death knell. A bureaucratic Goliath, its decrees were typically considered infallible, its consensus awaited armament that no single species could withstand. Even the merest thought of Earth, now, felt like a forbidden whisper in the vast telepathic networks linking the Council's planets. Sanctions lay heavy like a shadow over the blue planet, a shroud of isolation and pariahdom. Earth's transgressions, dabbling in the untamed art of telepathic warfare, had been noted, and the punishment was swift. Humans, with their clumsy grasp of psychic abilities, had stumbled too close to power the Council had long since deemed sacrosanct. The Council's telepathic net, a subtle and pervasive lattice woven amongst the galaxy's most dominant species, now pulled taut against Earth. The embargo on communication and trade was only the beginning. The underlying message was clear. Humans were outmatched in a domain they barely understood. On Earth, the atmosphere was charged with a growing realization of their precarious position. The young Lieutenant Kara Voss, stationed at the Alliance's Boulder Command, stood at the nexus of this burgeoning crisis. Her days were now a flurry of strategic meetings and sleepless nights, the weight of her responsibilities a constant pressure on her mind. Yet, she was determined. She had to be. The orb-like lights of the command center flickered as if in sync with her thoughts, casting fleeting shadows on the walls. The room was filled with murmurs, voices tinged with anxiety and fear. A holographic map of the galaxy hovered in the center, its vibrant colors dulled by the prevailing sense of doom. "Lieutenant," a voice broke through her reverie. It was Marcus, a fellow officer and her closest confidant in these trying times. His eyes, usually full of mischief, were now shadowed with worry. He leaned close, speaking in a whisper that barely carried beyond the din. "The Council's restrictions are tightening. They've intercepted our latest attempts at reaching out to the few allies we thought might stand with us." Kara nodded, swallowing hard. Marcus's presence was a comfort, a reminder that she was not alone in shouldering the burden of Earth's plight. "We need to find a way to counter their network, Marcus," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor of uncertainty beneath. "Or at least understand it enough to break through their blockade." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, his frustration palpable. "The Council's telepaths are light years ahead of us, Kara. They navigate the mental planes as we do the physical. How do we match that?" His question hung in the air, a challenge without an answer. Kara's mind raced. She had always been a strategic thinker, her instincts honed by years of training and now necessity. Yet, the scope of their current adversary was daunting. The Council's telepathic network was a living entity, one that adapted and evolved, an omnipresent barrier against which they seemed to dash themselves futilely. Amidst these thoughts, a flicker of an idea sparked, a half-formed thought, born from desperation. "What if we aren't meant to match them, Marcus?" she mused aloud. "What if there's another way entirely?" Her words caught his attention, a glimmer of curiosity breaking through his despondence. "What are you getting at?" "We've been trying to play by their rules," she explained, her mind racing ahead. "What if we look for cracks in the system, smaller channels they might overlook? Our technology might be limited, but it's also unique. They've never had to deal with something like us before." Marcus considered this, nodding slowly. "It's a long shot, but maybe there's a way to exploit our unpredictability. We need someone who understands both technology and the mind." "Dr. Wei," Kara said immediately. "She's been studying the intersection of neural networks and quantum computing." Marcus raised an eyebrow, impressed. "Do you think she can help?" "It's a gamble," Kara admitted. "But we don't have the luxury of time or options." The decision made, Kara and Marcus departed the command center, the weight of their mission clear. The corridors of Boulder Command felt like a labyrinth, every step echoing with the urgency of their quest. As they reached Dr. Wei's lab, Kara could feel the tension in her chest, a tight coil of hope and dread. Dr. Wei was a diminutive woman with a sharp gaze that seemed to pierce through pretense. Her lab was a controlled chaos of screens and equipment, each surface teeming with data streams and projections. As Kara and Marcus explained their idea, Wei listened intently, fingers steepled, her mind a fortress of calculation and insight. "You want to use quantum entanglement to bypass the Council's telepathic network," she summarized, her voice calm and measured. "It's a radical approach." "Radical is what we need," Kara replied, her desperation barely masked by determination. "Can you do it?" Wei's lips quirked into a small, knowing smile. "With the right resources and a bit of time, I might be able to establish a prototype. But the risk is substantial. If we fail, it could expose us to the Council in ways we can't anticipate." Kara nodded, feeling the weight of each word. "I understand, but it's a risk we have to take." As Wei set to work, Kara returned to her duties, the constant hum of the command center a backdrop to her thoughts. She found herself staring at the holographic map, its swirling constellations a reminder of the vastness of their challenge. The Council's presence was a looming shadow, an entity so entrenched in the fabric of the galaxy that even the thought of opposing it seemed heretical. Yet, deep within her, a flicker of defiance burned. It was this ember that she clung to, the stubborn refusal to accept defeat, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Days passed in a blur of activity, the tension in Boulder Command thickening with each passing hour. Kara and Marcus worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Wei, their collaboration a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching darkness. The prototype was a fragile thing, a delicate dance of quantum threads and neural impulses, but it represented a chance, a slim, fleeting chance, to reach beyond their isolation. On the eve of their first test, Kara found herself on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The universe stretched out before her, an endless tapestry of light and shadow. "Do you think we can do it?" Marcus's voice broke the silence, his presence a steady comfort. Kara turned to face him, her expression resolute. "We've come this far. We owe it to ourselves to try." Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp ping from their devices, an alert that sent a jolt of adrenaline through them both. It was a signal from Dr. Wei. The prototype was ready. As they descended to the lab, the air was charged with anticipation. The room was dimly lit, the glow of the prototype casting eerie patterns on the walls. Wei stood by the device, her expression one of cautious optimism. "Here goes nothing," she murmured, her fingers deftly manipulating the controls. The room seemed to hold its breath as the prototype activated, its energies unfurling like a web of light. For a moment, nothing happened, and doubt began to creep in. But then, a thread of connection emerged, a tenuous link that bypassed the Council's network, reaching out into the void. Kara's heart pounded in her chest. It was working, yet, the triumph was short-lived. As the link stabilized, an alarm blared through the command center, its shrill tones a harbinger of impending doom. The Council had detected the breach, their retaliation swift and merciless. Kara's mind reeled as the command center plunged into chaos. The Council's counterstrike was a mental assault of staggering force, a wave of psychic energy that threatened to overwhelm their defenses. Kara and Marcus exchanged a glance, the gravity of their situation crystal clear. "We need to shut it down," Marcus shouted over the din, his voice a lifeline amidst the cacophony. Wei was already at the controls, her fingers flying in a desperate attempt to sever the connection. But the prototype had taken on a life of its own, its energies spiraling out of control. Kara felt the mental pressure building, a crushing weight that threatened to shatter her resolve. Amidst the chaos, a new sensation emerged, a flicker of consciousness not their own, an alien mind reaching out through the breach they had created. It was a presence both familiar and unfathomable, a glimpse into the depths of the Council's power. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. In that suspended instant, Kara understood the magnitude of what they had unleashed. The Council was not merely a collection of species but a gestalt entity, a consciousness born from the union of countless minds. It was an intelligence that dwarfed their own, a force of nature that defied comprehension. Yet, in that same moment, Kara glimpsed something else, a potential within humanity that even the Council had not foreseen. It was a fleeting vision, a tantalizing hint of what they might become if they survived this crucible. The realization was enough to galvanize her. With a surge of determination, she reached out mentally, guiding Wei through the intricate process of disarming the prototype. Together, they wrestled control from the device, shutting it down just as the Council's assault reached its crescendo. The silence that followed was deafening. Kara swayed on her feet, the exertion leaving her drained but resolute. They had survived, but only just. The Council had been alerted to their capabilities, and the repercussions would be swift. Marcus placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "We bought ourselves some time, but this is far from over." Kara nodded, her gaze meeting his with a shared understanding. "We need to regroup, figure out our next move. There's a storm coming, and we have to be ready." In the aftermath of their desperate gamble, the weight of Earth's plight pressed down on them with renewed intensity. Yet, within that burden lay the seed of defiance, a burgeoning potential that hinted at humanity's true strength. It was an ember waiting to ignite, a promise of resilience and ingenuity that might just tip the scales in their favor. As Kara and her team prepared for the battles to come, the universe watched, the fate of Earth hanging in the balance. In the grand tapestry of existence, their struggle was but a thread, but it was one that burned with the fire of a people unyielding in the face of insurmountable odds. The air shimmered with tension, an invisible tide of psychic energy that rippled across the battlefield as human and alien minds clashed in an unseen war. Lieutenant Mira Thorne crouched behind the ruins of what had once been a bustling trade city, now reduced to smoldering wreckage under the relentless assault of the Zilith. The alien invaders, masters of telepathic warfare, pressed their advantage with a brutal elegance that left the human forces scrambling to adapt. Mira wiped sweat from her brow, her mind a crucible of pain and determination. The Zilith were relentless, their psychic onslaughts like knives slicing through the fabric of human thoughts, seeking to unravel their will. But humans had always thrived under pressure, finding strength in adversity that defied logic, and Mira was determined to prove that adaptability was humanity's greatest weapon. "Mira," a voice crackled through her earpiece, the connection laced with static from the psychic interference. It was Captain Liu, her commanding officer and the heart of their resistance. "We need to fall back. They're pushing harder than we anticipated. Regroup at Point Echo." Point Echo was a warehouse district, its subterranean tunnels offering a temporary sanctuary from the mental barrage. Mira nodded to her squad, their faces a mixture of fear and resolve. Each one of them bore the scars of psychic attacks, but their spirits remained unbroken, a testament to the resilience that had kept humanity alive through countless trials. As they moved, Mira caught glimpses of the Zilith, their forms deceptively fragile, with elongated limbs and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly luminescence. Their telepathic prowess made them formidable, their minds entwining to form a network of lethal precision. But humans were unpredictable, their thoughts a chaotic tapestry that defied the linear logic of the Zilith. Mira had watched her comrades adapt to the psychic intrusion, developing mental shields crafted from memories, emotions, and dreams. It was this creativity that gave them a fighting chance, however slim. The journey to Point Echo was fraught with danger. The Zilith's mental probes clawed at their defenses, and Mira felt her mind teetering on the edge of collapse. She gritted her teeth, focusing on a memory of her childhood, a simple picnic by the lake with her family, the sun warm on her skin and laughter in the air. It was a shard of tranquility amidst the psychic storm, a beacon guiding her through the chaos. They reached the warehouse district just as the Zilith launched another assault, their mental tendrils probing for weaknesses. Inside the tunnels, Myra's squad took a moment to breathe, their minds weary but unyielding. Captain Lou was already there, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. "Lieutenant Thorne," he said, his voice a low rumble. "What's our status?" "We're holding, sir," Mira replied, though she could feel the strain in her own mind. "But the Zilith are adapting faster than we anticipated." Lou nodded, his expression grim. "We're not ready for a full retreat yet. We need to buy time for the scientists to finish the modulator." The modulator was humanity's last hope, a device designed to disrupt the Zilith's psychic network. But it was still in the experimental stage, its effectiveness unproven. Mira clenched her fists, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. They had to hold the line, no matter the cost. As they regrouped, a new obstacle presented itself. The Zilith had begun manipulating the environment, using their telepathy to trigger seismic disturbances. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and Mira realized with a cold dread that the tunnels could become their tomb. "We have to move," she barked, urgency sharpening her voice. "The Zilith are trying to bury us alive." Her squad sprang into action, navigating the labyrinthine passages with an agility born of desperation. Each step was a battle against the encroaching darkness, the tremors growing more violent with each passing moment. It was then that Mira felt a sharp, invasive presence in her mind, a Zilith probe latching onto her consciousness with terrifying intensity. She staggered, her vision blurring as pain lanced through her skull. The alien mind was cold and calculating, its touch like ice on her synapses. "Mira," Captain Lou's voice cut through the agony, anchoring her. "Fight it." Drawing on reserves she didn't know she had, Mira summoned the image of the lake once more, its tranquil waters a shield against the alien intrusion. She felt the Zilith's confusion, their inability to comprehend the depth of human emotion. It was a small victory, but enough to force the probe to retreat. They emerged into a cavernous chamber, the walls lined with crates of supplies. It was a temporary reprieve, but Mira knew the Zilith wouldn't relent. They were close, she could feel their presence like a storm gathering on the horizon. As her squad fortified their position, Mira approached Captain Lou. "Sir, we need a counterattack. Something the Zilith won't expect." Lou nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "What do you have in mind?" "Psychic feedback," Mira said, her mind racing. "We can't match their telepathy, but we can overwhelm them with noise, disrupt their network with a barrage of chaotic thoughts." It was a risky plan, one that could backfire if not executed perfectly. But they were out of options, and Myra's instincts told her it might be their best shot. Lou considered her proposal, then nodded. "Do it, I'll coordinate with the other squads." Mira relayed her plan to her team, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and determination. They had been trained for conventional warfare, but this was a new frontier, one where the human mind was both weapon and shield. As they prepared, Mira felt a surge of camaraderie, a bond forged in the crucible of battle. These were her friends, her family, and she would protect them with everything she had. When the Zilith attacked again, they were ready. Mira and her squad unleashed a torrent of thought, a cacophony of memories and emotions flooding the psychic channels. It was like pouring static into a radio signal, and she felt the Zilith's confusion as their network wavered under the assault. But the Zilith were quick to adapt, their minds adjusting to the chaos with an unsettling speed. Mira pushed harder, drawing on every memory she could muster, her mind a kaleidoscope of images and sensations. The Zillith pressed their advantage, their probes slicing through the feedback with surgical precision. Mira felt her defenses crumbling, the mental strain threatening to consume her. The darkness loomed, a void that whispered of defeat. In that moment, she glimpsed what made humans truly special, a spark of defiance that burned even in the face of despair. It was a flicker of hope, a reminder that they were more than the sum of their parts. But hope wasn't enough to stem the tide. As the Zillith closed in, Mira realized they were outnumbered and outmatched. The modulator was still incomplete, and their psychic defenses were failing. They were at their darkest moment, the weight of impending defeat bearing down on them. Yet, in the depths of their struggle, Mira saw the potential for something greater, a unity born of shared adversity, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. With the Zillith closing in, Mira prepared to make a final stand, her heart steeling against the encroaching void. They would fight to the last breath, and in that fight, they would find the strength to endure. But as the psychic storm raged around them, Mira wondered if it would be enough. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, a fragile thread poised to snap beneath the weight of an alien mind. Yet even in that darkness, she clung to the spark within, a beacon that refused to be extinguished. As the Zillith pressed their advantage, Mira knew they had to adapt once more, to push beyond the limits of human imagination and forge a path to victory in a war of minds. It was a challenge unlike any they had faced, but she believed in the resilience of her species, in their capacity to transcend the impossible. And so they fought, with minds and hearts united against the tide, knowing that in the crucible of their struggle, they might just discover the true power of humanity, a power the Zillith could never comprehend. The void stretched like an eternal night, deep and inscrutable, where the whispers of the enemy curled like smoke through the darkness. Through the black, a single human vessel, the Ardent, drifted amongst the stars, its hull like a beleaguered shield against the relentless assault of alien minds. Inside, an uneasy stillness had settled over the crew, each member locked in a battle of wills that transcended the physical. The telepathic war had consumed entire systems, the minds of the enemy reaching across light years with insidious intent, probing, tearing at the very fabric of human thought. Humanity's allies had fallen one by one, their defenses shattered by the eerie precision of their adversaries. The Ardent was now a solitary bastion, the last flicker of defiance in a universe gone mad. Captain Elise Kwan stood on the bridge, her eyes closed, face contorted in concentration. Around her, the crew strained under the mental pressure, fighting back against the unseen force that sought to unravel their consciousness. "Captain," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Mendez, her voice a strained thread in the silence. "They're hitting hard. I can feel them trying to breach the barrier." Kwan nodded, her expression grim. The mental barrier was the only thing keeping the crew from being overwhelmed, a fragile construct of shared willpower that was being tested to its limits. "They think they've already won," Kwan said, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "But they underestimate us. They always have." The enemy's overconfidence was palpable, a smug certainty that radiated through the telepathic ether like poison. The alien minds were vast, intricate networks of shared consciousness, their thoughts like blades slicing through the chaos. Yet Kwan knew that in their arrogance, they had overlooked the most fundamental trait of humanity, the indomitable spirit that refused to yield. Across the bridge, Lieutenant Mark Tran's hands trembled as he maintained the ship's trajectory, his mind grappling with the ghostly tendrils that sought to ensnare him. The weight of the enemy's presence bore down on him, yet he gritted his teeth, drawing strength from the knowledge that surrender was not an option. "We need to find a way to disrupt their link," Tran murmured, his voice barely audible. "If we can sever their connection, even for a moment, it might give us a chance." Kwan nodded, her mind racing. The telepathic war was fought in a realm beyond physical space, a battlefield where thoughts were weapons and willpower was armor. To disrupt the enemy's connection was to strike at the heart of their power. "We need a way to amplify our own psychic signatures," Kwan said, her mind formulating a plan. "If we can project a countersignal, something that confuses their network." Mendez caught on to the idea, her eyes sparking with the first glimmers of hope. "Like a feedback loop," she suggested. "Use their own strength against them." The bridge crew felt a ripple of determination pass through them, a shared resolve that defied the despair clawing at their minds. It was a plan born of desperation, a gambit against impossible odds, but it was something, an assertion of their will to survive. The enemy, sensing the flicker of rebellion, intensified their assault, their presence a suffocating pressure that threatened to drown the crew in a sea of alien thought. The crew's mental shields wavered, the barrier flickering like a candle in a storm. Yet in that moment of near collapse, Quan felt the surge of human ingenuity coalesce within her. The crew, their minds interconnected by shared purpose, became a singular force, a unity that defied the alien intrusion. "Initiate the projection," Quan commanded, her voice a beacon in the dark. "Focus everything we have into it." The ship's systems hummed as they diverted all available power into the psychic amplifier, a device cobbled together from the remnants of fallen allies and human innovation. The crew channeled their thoughts, their very essence, into the machine, a collective roar of defiance aimed at the heart of the alien presence. The projection burst forth, a wave of human thought that rippled through the psychic plane, seeding confusion and chaos amongst the enemy ranks. The feedback loop spiraled through the alien network, turning their own strength against them. For a moment, the oppressive weight lifted, the tendrils of alien thought recoiling in shock. The crew felt a profound silence, a vacuum where the enemy's presence had been, a space filled with the echoes of their own determination. "Status report," Quan demanded, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "Their link is disrupted," Mendez replied, her voice filled with astonishment. "It's working, Captain. They're pulling back." But the respite was only momentary. The enemy, realizing the source of their confusion, retaliated with renewed fury. The psychic storm returned, more intense than before, a maelstrom of alien will that bore down upon the ardent with relentless force. The crew buckled under the renewed assault, their shields faltering under the onslaught. Yet within the crucible of their desperation, something extraordinary was forged. The human mind, pressed to its limits, began to adapt, to evolve in response to the alien threat. Quan felt it first, a shift in perception that transcended the boundaries of her individual consciousness. The crew, united by their shared struggle, began to merge at a deeper level, their thoughts interwoven into a tapestry of collective awareness. "We're becoming a single entity," Quan realized, her voice filled with wonder. A Gestalt consciousness. The Ardent's crew had tapped into a potential that lay dormant within humanity, a latent ability that only the direst of circumstances could awaken. They were no longer isolated minds, but a unified force, a singular will that defied the alien assault. The enemy, sensing the shift, recoiled, their overconfidence giving way to a flicker of doubt. The humans, mere individuals in their eyes, had become something more, a threat that could not be quantified within their cold calculations. Yet even as the crew embraced their newfound power, they knew it was a temporary reprieve. The enemy's resources were vast, their numbers overwhelming. The Ardent still stood alone, a single ship against a tide of darkness. But in that darkest hour, the seeds of resurgence were sown. The crew, buoyed by their shared strength, began to devise a new plan, one that would turn the tide of the war. They would use their Gestalt consciousness to reach out, to contact other survivors, to rally the remnants of humanity into a force that could challenge the alien dominion. The realization filled them with a renewed sense of purpose, a determination that burned brighter than the stars. They would not surrender, would not falter, for they carried within them the essence of what it meant to be human. A spirit unbroken, a will unyielding. The enemy, sensing the change, gathered for one final assault, their intent to snuff out the fledgling hope that dared to rise against them. The psychic pressure intensified, a tidal wave aimed to crush the Ardent once and for all. Yet in the face of annihilation, the crew stood resolute, their minds intertwined, a singular force that defied the darkness. "Hold the line," Quan commanded, her voice a rallying cry that echoed through the shared consciousness. "We are not alone. We never were." The Ardent became a beacon, its presence a rallying call that resonated through the psychic void. Across the vastness of space, other human minds, isolated and beleaguered, heard the call and responded. The tide was turning, the first glimmers of a resurgence that would challenge the alien supremacy. As the enemy's assault reached its zenith, the crew braced for the impact, their minds and hearts united in defiance. The breaking point was upon them, a moment where everything would change. And in that moment, the universe held its breath, the fate of humanity poised on the edge of a knife. The Gestalt consciousness surged, a torrent of human will that crashed against the alien tide, a testament to the enduring spirit that had brought them to this point. The darkness trembled, the enemy's certainty faltering in the face of the impossible. The Ardent stood as a symbol of humanity's indomitable spirit, a reminder that even in the bleakest of times, hope could ignite like a wildfire, consuming the shadows. And so, in that pivotal instant, the battle for the soul of humanity reached its crescendo, the outcome uncertain, the future unwritten. But one thing was clear: humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would fight, they would endure, and they would prevail. For this was their darkest hour, and yet it was also the dawn of something extraordinary, a testament to the boundless potential of the human spirit, a beacon that would guide them through the night and into the light of a new day. The cold void of space hummed with a frequency that was neither sound nor silence, but something in between, an ethereal whisper threading its way through the minds of the telepathic combatants locked in the endless dance of war. The Zil, a race known for their psychic prowess, had dominated the galactic theater for eons, their mental tendrils weaving webs of influence and control over countless species. But now, they faced a new adversary, one they had believed to be primitive and ineffectual: humanity. On the bridge of the human flagship, the UNS Dauntless, Captain Elena Sato stood amidst the holographic displays, her mind a fortress of calm amid the chaos. Around her, the collective consciousness of her crew surged and pulsed, a tapestry of thoughts and emotions woven with threads of determination and defiance. The Zil had underestimated them, mistaking humanity's fragmented psyches for weakness. The Zil fleet loomed ahead, a constellation of sleek, iridescent vessels that glimmered like malevolent stars. Their presence was a weight in the minds of the humans, a psychic pressure that sought to crush and subdue. Yet, there was a resilience in the human psyche, a stubborn refusal to be dominated that the Zil could not comprehend. As the battle unfolded, the human forces revealed their true strength, not in the raw power of their minds, but in the complexity and unpredictability of their thoughts. The Zil, accustomed to the ordered minds of their usual foes, found themselves bewildered by the chaotic nature of human cognition. It was like trying to capture a whirlwind with a net. Aboard the Zil command ship, Supreme Mind Katharan observed the unfolding battle with an increasing sense of unease. The humans, they had believed, would be easy prey. Their scattered thoughts and emotional volatility were seen as weaknesses, vulnerabilities to be exploited. Yet, as the battle wore on, it became evident that these very traits were proving to be their strength. The humans' minds were labyrinths of unpredictability, their thoughts a symphony of discord that defied the Zil's attempts to control. Supreme Mind, their defenses are adapting, murmured Submind Virathel, a hint of disbelief threading through the telepathic link. Katharan's focus sharpened, probing the mental defenses of the human fleet. What he found was a revelation. The humans were not merely resisting, they were learning. Captain Sato's voice, calm and steady, resonated through the minds of her crew. Focus your thoughts, let them flow like water, adapt and respond. We've trained for this. Remember the exercises. Her words were a balm, soothing the frayed nerves of her crew, knitting their thoughts into a cohesive whole. The human's mental architecture, once thought disordered, began to reveal its true nature. Like a fractal unfolding, complexity arose from chaos, an emergent order that defied the Zil's attempts to predict and control. The humans were not a single entity to be subdued but a collective, each mind contributing to a greater whole. It was then that the humans deployed their secret weapon, a culmination of their ingenuity and resilience: the Mind Nexus. A technological marvel born from the fusion of human creativity and telepathic potential, it amplified their collective consciousness, weaving their thoughts into a tapestry of unprecedented strength and clarity. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The Zil felt the shift, a sudden surge in the mental landscape that rippled through their ranks, disrupting their coordination and undermining their confidence. For the first time in countless cycles, the Zil felt the icy fingers of doubt. On the Dauntless, Sato could feel the change as well. The Mind Nexus thrummed with a vibrant energy, a resonance that echoed through the minds of her crew. This is it, she sent, her thought a beacon of hope and defiance. We turn the tide here. For Earth, for humanity. The Zil, once the masters of telepathic warfare, found themselves on the defensive. Their attempts to infiltrate the human minds were met with a cascading wall of thoughts, each fragment a piece of a greater puzzle that eluded their grasp. It was as though they were trying to read a book where the words constantly shifted, forming new meanings with every glance. Supreme Mind Katharan realized they had miscalculated, underestimated the humans' capacity for adaptation and growth. The humans' ability to learn and evolve was unlike anything the Zil had encountered. In their arrogance, they had assumed that the humans' chaotic minds were a weakness, never considering that this very chaos could be harnessed into a formidable weapon. In a desperate bid to regain control, Katharan concentrated his formidable psychic powers, attempting to breach the human nexus. But as he reached out, he was met with the unexpected, a reflection of his own thoughts, twisted and turned back upon him. The humans had learned to mirror and deflect, turning the Zil's own strength against them. The realization struck him with the force of a supernova. The humans were not just resisting, they were evolving. Each encounter, each mental skirmish, honed their abilities further, pushing them beyond the limits the Zil had thought possible. They were a species that defied the natural order, rewriting the rules of telepathic warfare as they went. On the Dauntless, Sato and her crew pressed their advantage. The mind nexus pulsed with a rhythm that matched the beating hearts of the humans, each pulse a declaration of their resolve. They would not be subjugated, would not bow to the Zil's will. Humanity's strength lay in their unity, their ability to find order in chaos, to draw strength from diversity. As the battle raged on, the humans began to turn the tide. The Zil ships, once an impenetrable wall of psychic might, were now faltering. The humans' collective consciousness surged forward, probing for weaknesses, exploiting the cracks in the Zil's defenses. It was a mental chess game played on a cosmic scale, and the humans were proving to be master strategists. Supreme Mind Katharan, struggling to maintain control, could feel the momentum slipping away. His once unshakable confidence now wavered, replaced by a growing sense of desperation. The humans, with their unpredictable minds and indomitable spirit, were proving to be the challenge the Zil had never anticipated. The turning point came when a young telepath on the Dauntless, Ensign Mia Torres, made a breakthrough. Her mind, agile and quick, danced across the mental battlefield with a grace that belied her inexperience. She found a vulnerability in the Zil's mental defenses, a flaw that had gone unnoticed in their arrogance. "Captain," her thought rang through the mind nexus, clear and sharp. "I've found a way in. We can disrupt their coordination, break their hold." Sato seized upon the opportunity, directing the collective focus of her crew towards the breach. The humans poured their thoughts into the opening, a torrent of mental energy that swept through the Zil ranks like a tidal wave. The Zil, unprepared for the onslaught, found their mental networks crumbling. Their once seamless coordination fractured, their unity shattered by the humans' relentless assault. For the first time, the Zil experienced the chaos they had so long sought to impose on others. Katharan, reeling from the reversal, could only watch as the humans rose to the challenge, their minds a brilliant tapestry of resilience and ingenuity. The realization that they had underestimated humanity was a bitter pill to swallow, made all the more galling by the humans' unexpected triumph. As the Zil fleet faltered, the human forces pressed their advantage. The Dauntless, leading the charge, cut through the enemy ranks with a determination that was palpable even in the void of space. The humans' minds, once considered chaotic and weak, now shone with a brilliance that could not be denied. In the final moments of the battle, as the Zil ships began to retreat, the humans made one last push. It was a testament to their spirit, their refusal to be conquered, that they drove the Zil from the battlefield, securing a hard-won victory that would echo through the annals of history. Katharan, retreating with the remnants of his fleet, could not shake the sense of awe and respect he now held for these humans. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species that defied expectations and dared to dream beyond the confines of their origins. As the Dauntless and her crew celebrated their victory, Captain Sato took a moment to reflect on what they had achieved. Humanity had faced a formidable adversary and emerged victorious, not through sheer power, but through ingenuity, adaptability, and the strength of their collective spirit. The battle had been a turning point, a moment when humanity revealed its true potential. They had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated, that they could stand against even the mightiest of foes and emerge triumphant. In the depths of space, as the remnants of the Zil fleet retreated into the darkness, a new era dawned. Humanity had proven their worth, and in doing so, had changed the course of history. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Yet, as the humans prepared for the challenges ahead, they did so with a newfound confidence, a belief in their ability to shape their own destiny. And so, the story of humanity's rise continued, a tale of courage and ingenuity that would inspire generations to come. The Zil had learned, too late, that they had underestimated their foes. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, a species that would not be subdued, and their journey was only just beginning. The cosmos was a symphony of thought, a cacophony of consciousness rippling through the quantum undercurrents of reality. Minds melded and clashed, a war waged not with weapons of steel or fire, but with the raw and unyielding power of the psyche. The Zalkar, an ancient race of telepathic conquerors, had long since dominated this battlefield, their minds like razors slicing through the collective mental plane, bending lesser wills to their command. They had never considered humans a threat until now. Humanity had always been underestimated. They were seen as primitive, their grasp on telepathic abilities rudimentary at best. But what the Zalkar didn't understand, what they couldn't fathom, was the indomitable spirit of humanity. A force so potent it could rewrite the very fabric of the universe. In the heart of the mental storm, Captain Alara Voss stood as an anchor. Her consciousness flared like a supernova, a beacon of defiance amidst the darkness. The Zalkar had sent their finest, their most formidable telepathic minds, confident in their superiority. They perceived human mental resistance as nothing more than a fleeting inconvenience, a temporary barrier easily shattered by their overwhelming might. But Alara was not alone. A web of human minds, each connected through the nexus of shared consciousness, bolstered her. This was not mere telepathy. This was a symphonic convergence of human will, a concert of thoughts harmonizing into a single, cohesive force. The Zalkar had never seen anything like it. The Zalkar's initial assault was brutal, their mental tendrils lashing out with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. They sought to isolate, to conquer each human mind individually, exploiting weaknesses with ruthless efficiency. Yet, as they pushed deeper, they encountered resistance unlike any they had ever known. Alara and her fellow humans fought not as isolated minds, but as one, a unified consciousness, each contributing their strengths, their resolve, their essence to the collective. The Zalkar's confidence wavered, their superiority questioned as the humans began to push back. The power of a million souls surged through Alara, a tidal wave of creativity and determination crashing against the Zalkar's mental walls. It was a dazzling display of human excellence, a testament to their resilience and ingenuity. In this realm where thought and reality intertwined, the humans wielded their creativity as a weapon. Each mind added to the collective tapestry, weaving a new reality from the threads of imagination and experience. The Zalkar were unprepared for this onslaught of innovation, their rigid mental constructs crumbling under the weight of humanity's boundless creativity. The Zalkar's mental fortress, once impregnable, began to fracture. The humans, guided by Alara's indomitable spirit, surged forward, their collective consciousness piercing the heart of the Zalkar's defenses. The invaders, who had once believed themselves invincible, now faced an enemy that defied their understanding. The Zalkar's leader, an entity of immense mental prowess, reached out to Alara, attempting to crush her spirit with a final, desperate assault. But Alara stood firm, her consciousness a bastion of light in the encroaching darkness. She reached deep within herself, drawing on the strength of every human who had ever dared to dream, to defy the odds, to push the boundaries of possibility. In that moment, the Zalkar leader realized their catastrophic misjudgment. They had underestimated the humans, dismissed their potential as insignificant. They had failed to grasp the depth of human tenacity, the power of their collective will. The Zalkar's arrogance had blinded them to the truth, that humanity was not a mere collection of individual minds, but a unified force capable of reshaping the universe. The human consciousness surged forward, enveloping the Zalkar leader, overwhelming them with a deluge of thoughts and emotions. The Zalkar's once mighty mind buckled under the pressure, their defenses collapsing as the human tide swept over them. It was a spectacular display of triumph, a moment where humanity's excellence shone brighter than the stars. The Zalkar, faced with the undeniable truth of their defeat, recoiled in shock and awe. The humans, with their boundless imagination and unyielding resolve, had turned the tables completely. The Zalkar's empire of thought, which had spanned galaxies, crumbled before the might of humanity's collective will. As the Zalkar retreated, their minds shattered and their spirits broken, Alara felt a profound sense of victory. They had done the impossible. They had triumphed against an enemy that had once seemed insurmountable. Humanity, with its unparalleled capacity for adaptation and growth, had emerged victorious on a battlefield where they had been deemed unworthy. The mental plane shimmered with the afterglow of human success, the echoes of their triumph resonating through the cosmos. The Zalker, who had once ruled the telepathic realm with an iron fist, had been humbled by a species they had considered inferior. As the last vestiges of the Zalker's presence faded from the collective consciousness, Alara opened her eyes, her heart swelling with pride. Around her, her comrades stirred, their faces alight with the realization of what they had achieved. They had not only survived, they had prevailed. Humanity had shown their true potential, their ability to transcend limitations and forge a new destiny. They had proven that the power of the human mind, when united in purpose and driven by an unyielding spirit, could overcome any obstacle, defeat any foe. The cosmos, once a battleground of despair, now stood as a testament to human excellence. The Zalker had learned a hard lesson, one that would echo through the annals of history, a lesson that humanity, with their indomitable will and limitless imagination, was not to be underestimated. Victory was theirs, and with it, a new chapter in the story of humanity unfolded. A chapter where they would continue to rise, to explore the infinite possibilities of existence, and to shape the future of the universe with their boundless potential. The silence after the mind battle was profound, a vacuum where once the cacophony of war resided. Humanity had emerged victorious, their minds fortified by both technology and an indomitable spirit. The alien coalition, once confident in their telepathic dominance, now lay in disarray, their intricate mental networks severed, their unity fractured. The Earth Command Center was a frenzy of controlled chaos, yet beneath the surface buzzed an undercurrent of triumph. General Lin strode through the bustling corridors, her mind still echoing with the remnants of the battle. She paused, looking out over the horizon where the sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. It seemed almost poetic that such beauty could follow such destruction. "General," came the voice of Lieutenant Sarah Kim, pulling Lin from her reverie. Kim's eyes shone not just with accomplishment but with something deeper, a sense of having found her place in the tapestry of human resilience. "We did it, Sarah," Lin said, her voice carrying a mixture of disbelief and pride. "We really did," Sarah nodded, a smile spreading across her face. The telepathic circuits held our minds. They were stronger than anyone believed possible. This victory had not been solely a triumph of technology. Human creativity, their unpredictability, and most importantly, their capacity for empathy had turned the tide. In the end, it was not just the ability to shield their thoughts but the willingness to connect them that had defeated the alien psychic onslaught. The realization of what had been achieved was beginning to ripple through the ranks. Soldiers who had felt the alien presence clawing at their minds now reveled in the clarity of their own thoughts. The oppressive fog of foreign influence had lifted, and with it came a renewed sense of identity and purpose. Elsewhere, the alien envoys, those few who survived the mental collapse, stood in awe of the human spirit. For so long, they had underestimated these beings, seeing them as primitive and naive. Now, they faced a species that had not only defended itself but had reshaped the battlefield entirely. In the aftermath, a new era of diplomacy began. Humanity, having proven its mettle, was now a force to be reckoned with on the interstellar stage. Peace accords were drawn up, with terms that acknowledged not just the military might of humanity, but their unique cultural and emotional strength. Ambassador Tarnik, one of the few alien leaders who had advocated for peace before the conflict, stood before the United Nations Assembly. His species, the Tarnians, had been among the first to recognize the value of an alliance with humanity. Now, with humility, he addressed the gathered representatives. "Your victory is not just of arms and minds," Tarnik said, his voice resonant and sincere. "It is a victory of heart. You have shown us a path we did not see, a path of unity through diversity, of strength through understanding." The assembly erupted in applause, a sound that carried with it the weight of new beginnings. Humanity had not only survived but had offered the galaxy a new paradigm, one where cooperation could thrive alongside competition, where differences could be celebrated rather than feared. As the diplomats continued to forge new alliances, the soldiers who had fought so bravely began to return to their lives. For some, like Sergeant Amir Patel, the transition was bittersweet. The war had forged bonds stronger than steel, camaraderie that transcended words. Yet, it was time to return home, to families and futures that had waited anxiously for their return. Emir stood on the tarmac, watching as the last of the transport ships departed. Beside him, Corporal Janice Ortega, his comrade in arms, shared a silent moment of reflection. The memories of battle, the shared glances in the heat of conflict, they were all part of a story that would live on within them. "Do you think they'll remember?" Janice asked, her voice tinged with a vulnerability that only those who had faced death could understand. "What we did here?" Emir turned to her, his expression one of gentle reassurance. "They will. This victory, it's not just in the history books. It's in the stars, Janice. It's in us." And indeed, the galaxy would never forget the day humanity stood its ground. The repercussions of this victory extended far beyond Earth, igniting a spark in other oppressed worlds. The message was clear. Even the most underestimated of beings could rise to greatness when faced with adversity. Back on Earth, the scientific community was abuzz with the implications of the telepathic technologies developed during the war. Dr. Alara Jensen, one of the leading minds behind the psychic shielding devices, found herself at the forefront of a new field of study. Her work had not only saved countless lives but had opened avenues of exploration into the potential of human consciousness. Alara sat in her lab, surrounded by data and prototypes. The war had pushed her to her limits, but it had also unlocked a part of her mind that had long lain dormant. Now, with the pressure of conflict behind her, she felt a sense of freedom to explore these new horizons. As she reviewed the latest findings, a quiet knock on the door drew her attention. It was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a fellow researcher and one of her closest friends. They had shared the highs and lows of their work, and now, with the war over, they shared a vision for the future. "Alara," Yuki began, her eyes bright with enthusiasm, "I've been thinking about the applications of our work beyond warfare. We could use this technology to enhance communication, to heal." Alara smiled, nodding in agreement. "Yes, Yuki, we've seen what we can achieve when we unite our minds. Imagine what we could do for those with mental illness, for education, for understanding our own consciousness." Together, they embarked on a journey to harness the power of the mind for peace and prosperity, their work becoming a beacon of hope and progress. As humanity began to explore these new possibilities, the universe watched with a mixture of apprehension and admiration. The telepathic barriers that had once separated species were beginning to crumble, replaced by bridges of understanding. In the years that followed, humanity became known not just as warriors, but as architects of a new order, an interstellar community where diversity was a strength and empathy a guiding principle. The scars of war, though still present, served as reminders of both the cost of conflict and the value of peace. The legacy of this victory would endure for generations. Children grew up hearing stories of courage and unity, of how their ancestors had defied the odds and changed the course of history. They looked to the stars not with fear, but with wonder and curiosity, eager to explore and learn from the universe and its myriad inhabitants. In this new age, the boundaries of possibility seemed to expand daily. Humanity, once isolated on its small blue planet, had become a beacon of hope and potential. Their story, our story, was one of resilience, of finding strength in vulnerability, of turning the tides of fate with sheer will and unwavering belief in a brighter tomorrow. And as the sun set once more over a planet that had dared to defy the odds, the words of an ancient poet seemed to echo through the cosmos. "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." This dream, however, was far from over. It was only just beginning, a dream shared by a universe that had come to understand the true power of humanity. The power not just to survive, but to transform, to inspire, and to lead by the light of their own enduring spirit.